During the mid-1970s, Salvatore Contorno was taken on a hit. However, he wasn't there to participate. Conversely, he was there to be observed. They wanted to gauge his reaction after they shot an unfortunate victim in the head. He obviously passed the test, and as a reward, he gained entrance into the Sicilian Mafia. In 1975, Contorno's dear friend, Girolamo Mimo Teresi, a man of honor, took him to the house of Stefano Bontante to be inducted. Bontante was the boss of the Santa Maria di Deju family in Palermo and had been the boss since his mid-20s. Contorno followed the footsteps of his father and brother, who were both men of honor. After becoming a member of Bontante's family, Contorno and Bontante became close friends and were even hunting partners. In fact, Contorno didn't have to report or answer to a caporegime. He reported directly to Bontante and was considered his right-hand man and one of his most loyal soldiers. According to Contorno, when he joined Cosa Nostra, it was a beautiful thing. There were no drugs, they helped each other. Today, they were only about self-interest. He added, when I became part of Cosa Nostra, we did not hurt women and children. This comparison, especially regarding hurting women and children, was him referring to the Corleonesi. Prior to Contorno becoming a member of the Sicilian Mafia, he was a butcher by trade. During his time in the life, he had owned a meat business. He also dabbled in cigarette smuggling, kidnapping, and eventually the narcotics business, which, if you reflect back to his earlier statement about Cosa Nostra being involved with drugs, sounds hypocritical. However, what he meant was, Cosa Nostra was a beautiful thing before their involvement with drugs. And if you think about it, any situation where illegal drugs are involved, the outcome is never positive. History has shown wars in the mafia take place when a family splits into factions. In the case of the Sicilian Mafia, it too split into two factions, one led by Luciano Ligio and another by Gaetano Badalamenti. In essence, it became Corleone versus Palermo. The Corleonesi, fueled by jealousy, plotted for years on the bosses in Palermo, who became extremely wealthy as a result of narcotics trafficking. There are many incidents that led up to the Second Sicilian Mafia War, but a significant and calculated move took place when the Corleonesi had Badalamenti removed from heading the commission. They accused him of not sharing profits from the drug trafficking and for the unsanctioned murder of Francesco Madonia, who was closely aligned with the Corleonesi. Not to be confused with Francesco Madonia, boss of San Lorenzo, who was also an ally of the Corleonesi. After removing Badalamenti, the Corleonesi replaced him with Michele Greco, someone Contorno called an opportunist with a thirst for power, who let the Corleonesi, specifically Totò Riina, manipulate him like a puppet. The next big move was when the Corleonesi killed Stefano Bontante on his birthday, April 23, 1981. Naturally, his death devastated Contorno, who not only lost a boss, but a dear friend. Bontante's death was followed by the killing of Salvatore and Zerillo on May 11, 1981. Inside of a month, the Corleonesi managed to take out Palermo's two top bosses. A short time later, Mimo Teresi and Contorno were invited by the Corleonesi, specifically Rosario Riccobono, to a peace meeting that would be held at the villa of Antonino Sossi. Contorno smelled the trap and tried to warn Teresi, who insisted on going. Subsequently, Contorno made a wise choice by not showing up because Teresi was never seen again. Totò Riina and the Corleonesi skillfully succeeded in eliminating Bontante and Zerillo and anyone that was close to them, and closed the circle of allies Badalamenti once had. The Corleonesi had convenient memory loss because while researching, time and time again, I've come across instances where it was Badalamenti who provided members of the Corleonesi, like Leggio and Provenzano, safe havens while they were fugitives. But in the Mafia, no good deed goes unpunished. Badalamenti held the position of head of the commission and therefore represented the biggest obstacle to the Corleonesi. But even after removing him from the commission, Badalamenti continued to be a force of power. On June 25, 1981, Contorno went to visit his parents with his wife, son, and nephew. When the visit ended, his nephew begged to drive with him, and his wife and son followed in a second car. As they approached an overpass, he recognized someone he knew driving alongside him. He waved and let the car go past. As he came to the top of the overpass, he noticed a second person who looked familiar standing in the window of a nearby apartment building. The next thing he knew, a motorcycle was headed straight towards him. He recognized the person riding the bike as Giuseppe Lucchesi, a member of the Corleonesi hit team. Then a second motorcycle appeared. On it was Pino Greco, and he raised the Kalashnikov and fired it at the Fiat Contorno was driving. Contorno wasn't hit, and although he tried covering his nephew with his body, the boy was grazed on the cheek by a bullet. When Greco circled back, Contorno fired 5 times at him and was sure that he hit him, as he later stated. I grabbed my gun. Pino Greco fired at me again. I'm sure I got him in the chest. It was then that I knew he was wearing a bulletproof vest. A Volkswagen Golf with more members of the hit team pulled up, and Pino Greco jumped in the car. Contorno, his nephew, and his wife and son were able to escape that attempt that day. Afterwards, he took his family and fled to Rome. Ballistics from the bullets fired on the overpass matched the same weapons used to kill Bontante and Inzerillo. Regarding the overpass incident, Contorno said, men of honor were not concerned whether my wife and son were with me. They would have killed them too. While in Rome with his family, he learned that his uncle and his wife's uncle were both killed. It was at that point that he began to plot revenge, and his first target would be Giuseppe Pippo Callo. Pippo Callo was a boss from Palermo who also sat on the commission. During the early 70s, Pippo Callo moved to Rome. Tommaso Buscetta was a former member of Pippo Callo's family. Contorno knew him to be a double-crosser, one who sided with the Coglianesi. And to his good fortune, Contorno was arrested on March 23, 1982, while hiding on a farm in Rome. He was placed in a prison in Pisa, where he learned that there even was a contract on him in the prison. He would later receive a 5-year sentence. In 1984, Tommaso Buscetta was extradited from Brazil to a prison in Italy, where he began cooperating with Giovanni Falcone. At some point, he was granted permission to visit with his old friend, Salvatore Contorno. When Buscetta walked into his cell, Contorno knelt down and kissed his hand. Buscetta addressed him by using his nickname. Cosa nostra is over, Tortuccio. You can talk. It was after that visit that Contorno began cooperating. I'd like to quickly mention the super thanks icon found underneath the video for anyone who'd like to show support to the channel, and thank you. The Coglianesi continued to target Contorno's family and friends. In total, over 30 people were killed. After cooperating, Contorno revealed that Michele Greco was the new head of the commission. Prior to this, investigators were confused as to Greco's status in the mafia. When questioned about Bernardo Provenzano, Contorno had this to say. They called him the professor, but in reality, he was a farmer. He's one that gets things done. He's not afraid of anyone. They call him the professor because when he came from the countryside, he began to wear silk shirts and nice suits. Contorno was one of the witnesses called to testify at the Maxi trial, and also was a key witness in the Pizza Connection trial, a trial where one of the defendants was Gaetano Badalamenti, who was ultimately convicted and sentenced to 45 years. After testifying at the Pizza Connection trial, Contorno entered the Witness Protection Program in the United States. But at some point, he no longer wanted to remain in the United States and wanted to return to Italy. According to him, he couldn't find work and worried about supporting his family. Both American and Italian authorities advised him against returning to Italy. His true intention to return was to seek revenge. At the time, Totorina sent Pietro Algieri to kill one of Contorno's surviving relatives, who they tracked down to a grocery store where he worked. But when Algieri walked into the store, the man was holding his 4-year-old daughter in his arms. So he called off the hit and walked out. When he explained this to Reina, he screamed at Algieri, "Do you know what that little girl's surname is? Contorno." Instead, on September 22, 1988, the Coglianesi killed Contorno's brother-in-law, which for security reasons delayed his return to Italy. On November 18, 1988, Contorno made the trip back to Italy. Records indicate between the months of March and April in 1989, he traveled to Sicily and stayed for a period of 10 days. He remained at his cousin Gaetano Gredo's house on the outskirts of Palermo. During the day, he would remain in the house and only ventured out at nighttime. Supposedly, when Totorina's brother-in-law, Leo Luca Bagarella, heard that Contorno was spotted near his hiding place in Via Malaspina, he panicked. On May 26, 1989, the police blitzed Gaetano Gredo's house. And in the house, they found a stash of hashish and heroin, and a large assortment of weapons and ammo, including pistols and sawed-off shotguns. They also discovered 2 armored cars, a stolen car parked outside as well. At one point, they chased a person across the field and were shocked when they caught up with him because it was Contorno. The blitz was intended for his cousin, who was a known narcotics trafficker. Contorno told them, "Yes, it's me. I was in America and now I'm here. I came to see my cousin Tano." A further investigation revealed that certain members of the Palermo Mafia, who once aligned themselves with the Corleonesi, were killed during that time frame. But they had no evidence that Contorno was involved in those murders. It's possible the Corleonesi was responsible, as they were known to kill some of the spies they once used in Palermo. There even was a rumor that Giovanni Falcone allowed Contorno to return to Sicily to kill off the mafiosi he couldn't catch. However, that theory proved to be false. The only person to be charged and convicted as a result of the Blitz was Contorno's cousin, whose house the weapons and drugs were found in. In January 1997, Contorno was arrested for narcotics trafficking and sentenced to 6 years. During an interview, he said the following: "First, I served the Italian state, and then I was abandoned. They treated me like a pawn when playing chess. The Italians first had me in Italy. Then from Italy, I switched to the pizza connection. They finished their business and abandoned me." Those who watched Salvatore Contorno testify years ago were of the opinion he was only sitting in the witness box because he could see no other way to stay alive.